Hello, Art12. Welcome to part 2 as we continue on with your value worksheet. We're actually going to shade the forms on the front and the back. So looking at your notes, we already learned about circular motion and having newspaper padding. We learned about overlapping layers, like adding layers in multiple directions. So now we're in number 4. So this is just shading reminders. It says avoid the light areas. These stay the white of the paper for now. So this whole area of the sphere we're going to avoid. We're going to kind of leave it alone to begin with. And then it says add darkest values first. Look for the shape of the core shadow. Use 6B. So I always start with the darkest value first. That way you can kind of use that graphite to smudge it around to create some of your lighter midtones. So honestly, we're going to have some blenders that do a lot of this work for us. So with the 6B, the core shadow, which helps create the form, is right here. It's like a crescent moon shape. And so I am going to hold my pencil horizontally so I can use the whole side of the graphite. And I'm going to layer within that crescent moon shape, but not perfectly. I don't need to stay in the line. So the value map is there. I like this worksheet in some ways, but sometimes it looks striped because you guys want to, you've been taught stay in the lines, but don't stay in the lines. Just kind of use it as a guide. It's a value map of kind of guiding you where you need to go. Okay, so I'm going to mess up that line. So I'm going to start fading out. So I'm going to lighten my pressure. Start kind of fading out, lightening pressure so it fades out nice and neat. Okay, fading out. Remember, you can always turn the paper so your arm is comfortable. Okay, I'm going to do another layer in there because I do want it to be fairly dark, and plus it doesn't look very smooth right now. So I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Trying to fill in some of those gaps. And so notice how I avoided this sliver at the bottom. That's the reflected light area. We're going to leave it alone for now. And so now I'm going to work on kind of fading out a little bit. Okay, so then I'm going to switch to my 2B pencil, and I'm going to overlap my core shadow just a little, and I'm really going to work on like getting rid of this line. So I don't want a line where the value starts and stops. I just want it to slowly transition. So similar to this value scale, this is what I want to happen on my sphere. So circular motion. Kind of really messing up. I'm going to turn my paper so it's a little bit easier for my shoulder with the pressure. Okay, so now I'm like lifting my wrist, like, okay, if this were the table, I'm like lifting my wrist up and kind of arching my arm a little bit so that just this is hitting the surface and my wrist is not on the table. Because now I want really, really light value, so I'm kind of hovering above. And by the time I get to this ring, I want to already be faded out. So I think one of the keys with shading to get smooth value is fade out before you need to. But don't just stop at that line. Just kind of fade out before you get to that line. So you should not have a line where the value starts and stops. You should be messing up that line. Get rid of it. Okay, so then in your set, you have 3 sets of blenders because it's for 3 different projects. So you have a set, hold on, let me pull them all out. You don't have to pull all of them out, but so we have 3 little tiny small ones, and we have 3 medium, and we have 3 large. And so for this practice, I'm going to have you take 1 medium and then put the rest back in the baggie. So you have one for the still life, 1 set. You have 1 set for your self-portrait. There we go, sorry. And then you have one set for your test in December. So that's why you have 3 different ones. So you want to keep them nice. Don't use them for anything else. I'm going to put my large and my small all back in my bag. I have the medium for this practice worksheet. Okay, so on the note sheet, it does have a reminder. It says we avoided the light areas, the highlight. We looked for shapes of the midtones, like where we needed to kind of fade out. Now we're going to use the blender in a circular motion. So these blenders are made from rolled up newspaper. And actually, I do have an old one here. I'm going to take apart. Do not do this. I'm just showing you. They're made from recycled newspaper. So it's the same stuff they print newspaper on. And all it is a tightly rolled cylinder and this shape. And so if you pick at it, it will come apart. And there is no way to get this back into this shape, and then you've just ruined your blender. The other thing is you can kind of see all these little lines on here, and do not push on the tip of it because that tip will retract in. It will sink in, and then you just have like a nub. Like you literally have like an end like this, but on this end. So we want to keep it nice. For the blender, nice and like kind of pointy. For the blenders, let's say my finger's the surface, you want to be using the whole side of the blender. So I should not be blending like this. You want to like hold it angled kind of horizontally. So you're using this whole side. It will work better for you. The blending will go a lot faster. It will look smoother, etc. All right. So for the blending, I'm going to use a circular motion. So it's kind of like, I equate it with cleaning. Like you're cleaning in a circular motion, Cinderella style with graphite, like small little circles. So I did my core shadow. Now I am going to lighten my pressure, and I'm shading in a circular motion, circular motion. And so for the tip of it, I am going to use it just a little bit along the edge. So you want to kind of save the tip of the blender for areas that are small or areas that need to have a clean edge. Okay, so then I am going to turn it upside down so that I can get along the reflected light area with the blender for a clean edge. Okay, and then I kind of squint my eyes and make it fuzzy. I kind of have like a line here I want to get rid of. So I'm going to do another round of blending in my mid-tone area. And then I don't necessarily like have the highlight just be that little oval. You want it kind of more like an area like this. It's just saying like this is the brightest part. So if you did get pencil in that area, then I would kind of erase it out, kind of oval erase out, and then really very gently, not very much pressure, I can go back and kind of blend where the eraser marks are. Okay, so then we're going to do one more layer of the core shadow. So since we like kind of use the core shadow to push everything out and smudge everything, then it lightens that area. So with my 6B, I'm going to go back in my core shadow part, get a little more precise along the edge. And I'm going to fade out while I'm doing this. So fading out the edge. So this is the difference between an A or a B. The A people go back and they do another layer so they have a full range of values. We want really, really dark parts and really, really light parts and everything in between. Okay, so then I'm gonna blend that one more time. And so you wanna make sure your first layer is really good. If you get a really good first layer and you take your time and you do it well, then your additional layer will not take long and it won't be hard to blend. So these blenders are not magical. They just kind of help you. It's an artistic tool. Okay. Before I move on into the cast shadow, I like to clean up as I go. Clean as you go. Clean as you go. So I'm going to clean up my edge. Make sure it's nice and precise looking. And I am going to use just regular pencil to try to match what I have and clean up my edge. Okay. All right. So clean it all up. You're making sure you don't have a line where one value starts and the next one stops. So I still feel like over here I have like a little bit of a line. I'm gonna mess that up. Okay. So with the 6B, now we're gonna do the cast shadow. So a cast shadow still has range of value. It has about a 7 or a 6 out here, but like really, really dark underneath. So I am going to outline. Get a really dark edge, and I am pressing not super hard, but you know, with a decent amount of pressure. And then I'm going to fade out that line. And so that's when the reflected light area generally will show a little bit better. And I still feel like that reflected light area is a little bit too light. I'm going to go over that. And then we want to fade that outline out. So we don't want to be able to see the outline. And so again, I start fading out sooner than I need to. Circular motion, circular motion. Okay, then with my blender, when I get a clean edge, so I am using the pointy tip of the blender. Okay, now circular motion to get that to fade out. Okay, then I'm going to lighten up my pressure because the cast shadow does fade out. So the further away it is from the object, the lighter it is. And then the closer to the object or right underneath, then you have the darkest part of the cast shadow. And so that gives it realism. It like puts it on the surface, it pops it off the surface, makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. It makes it look believable, like it's an actual item blocking the light, creating a cast shadow. So we do have the highlight, midtones, the core shadow that's curved, so it creates the form of the curve, reflected light, and then cast shadow that's darkest underneath, fading out. Okay, so finish that up, do it well, clean it all up, etc. Then flip over. All right, so for the cylinder, we're going to do the top part first. So it says from a 5 to a 3. So I'm going to use 2B. And I'm going to go a little bit darker and kind of outline for clean edges. But I'm going to match that outline and fade it in. So we don't necessarily want things to look outlined because in real life, there's not dark outlines all over the place. We want it to look real. Okay, so I'm going to lighten my pressure. Really, really lighten. Okay, I'm going to do another layer. Okay, so blend. Okay, so we have those midtones. So it looks like it's hollow or facing away from the light. Okay, so on this one, we have this highlight area, a number 1. That's going to stay white. But notice how it's 3 on either side. So it still needs a 2 fading into the 3. So we still need it to fade out. The core shadow is right here. So that's the darkest part because then this is the reflected light area on the right-hand side. So I am going to start with my 6B. And again, this value map is much more obvious. Do not stay in the lines. Do not stay in the lines. Okay, but I'm going to outline that part for a clean edge, top and bottom. Okay, so I'm going to use the whole side of my pencil. I'm not staying in the line. I'm just putting the dark value in that general area. Now I'm adding another layer in the opposite direction. And I will say, like, if yours looks pretty good on this paper, it's going to look amazing on the drawing paper because this paper is very difficult. But I have tried to make copies on our drawing paper and I messed up the machine. So we get copy paper. Okay, so I'm fading that out into the reflected light area, which is like a 6 or a 7 level from the value scale. And I'm gonna kind of gently outline just to get a clean edge. That way maybe I'll have less erasing to do. Okay, so that's faded out pretty well before using the blender. Do one more layer. One more layer can never hurt. Okay, so over here, it fades from a 5 into a 3. So obviously there's a 4 between that. And so I'm gonna just use my 6B to fade out to get rid of that line and fade out. Then I'm gonna switch pencils. So I'm gonna switch to 2B so I can get lighter value. And I do overlap the 6B. I mean, the more layers, the better. The smoother it will look usually. Okay, so I'm gonna move this so my arm is comfortable, but I wanna fade out. I wanna get rid of this line, but I wanna fade out very quickly because your blender is gonna smudge a lot of this over. Your blender is gonna do some of the work for you. Okay, so this side is the little bit of 3. We're going to use just the blender for that. So just leave it alone for now. Okay, circular motion. I'm going to blend in the core shadow first. And so the other reason why we do the dark value first is then it gets your blender all dirty, so it's full of graphite. And if you have graphite along the whole side, that means you're doing it correctly. You shouldn't just have graphite on the very tip of the blender. That means you're using the blender incorrectly. You should hold it, like put it down, pick it up, and hold it like that to blend with. Okay, so I am also moving my paper for craftsmanship so I can get good clean edges. Okay, now I'm going to lighten my pressure. So I'm like lifting my arm like off the table, lifting my shoulder a little bit. And then you can also hold your blender at the very end so it forces you to not press very hard. Okay, so remember we need to move from like a 3 to a 2, and I'm disregarding that line. Okay, so because my blender is all dirty, then I can just do that little sliver part on the other side. So I think I'm still gonna move this. I'm gonna try to blend and fade that out. So disregard the line. It's just showing you like in this area. Okay, so then I want an A. So I always want an A. I'm gonna add another layer to my core shadow. And I'm not gonna stay in the line perfectly. And with the drawing paper, it's much more obvious where you're adding another layer. This paper, like it's about done accepting graphite. It doesn't have very much tooth to really push into. Okay, I'm gonna blend that one more time. So it doesn't look like much, but when you get to the drawing paper, it's a lot more obvious if you've done a second layer or not on your core shadow. Okay, cast shadow, 6B, super dark. Super, super, super dark, pressing a little bit hard. Okay, fading out. All right, then circular motion. Okay, it says 7 or 6. So remember to fade out before you think you need to. And I go a little bit lighter because once you use the blender, it's going to get darker. And then also, it's a lot easier to add layers, but taking away layers never really looks good with graphite. Unless it's supposed to be streaky like hair or something like that. Okay, so clean it up. Clean it up, clean it up, clean it up. Okay, the cone highlight is here. Core shadow is here. Just want to make sure like you maintain like the pointiness kind of at the top, so it really looks like it's coming to a peak. So I am gonna be a little more cognizant of that. Okay, not staying in the lines. Building up my layers. Another direction. My core shadow. Okay, lightening up my pressure to do a layer where the reflected light area is on the right hand side, because the light is supposed to be looking like it's hitting from the left, hits the surface, bounces back. So get rid of the lines between. Okay, then I want to fade out pretty quickly and making sure I don't kind of like shade over the whole top of it. Try to maintain the little peak parts. Okay, so I'm just kind of messing up that line. Then I'm going to switch to the 2B. I'm going to overlap that area that has a 5. And then already I'm fading out because I know that now that my blender has a lot of graphite on it, I really don't need a lot on this paper. This area is really small. Okay, blending circular motion. Remember to turn the paper so your arm is comfortable so you can get good clean edges. Okay, lightening up my pressure as I fade out into the, as I fade out into the 5 or the middle. Okay, really lightening. So now I'm going to hold my blender at the very end so I can get like a really light value. Okay, over here, I'm going to use whatever's on my blender. Not even going to put pencil down. Okay, I'm going to erase, clean up. Another layer because I want my A. Messing up my line so it fades out. Blending again. Okay, cast shadow, 6B. Really, really dark along the edge. Fade out. Blend, and then you are finished. So clean it up if you have stuff outside. And if I kind of squint my eyes and make them fuzzy. And if it looks like, I still feel like there's a line right here. So I'm gonna mess that up a little bit more. I feel like there's a line up there to get rid of. So if there's a line where it definitely starts and stops, then you need to kind of blend that a little bit more. Or if it looks like liney, then blend in the opposite direction to kind of smooth it out. So it's the layers of pencil, dun, 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 layers of blending to get a really smooth result. Okay, so you need to take a picture of the front. You need to take a picture of the back. Both those pictures need submitted into your Google Doc. Good job, you just finished your value practice. And our next step is to shade some glass. Okay, good luck.